When he called this time, and it was out of the clear blue for me, I knew that there were people who were suggesting that I should be considered, but I didn't ask for it. Never had a conversation with him. So I get a phone call, and he's on the other end of the line and says, I want you to be ambassador to Israel. It really came out of left field for me and was somewhat of a shock. I've still been in shock over it. But it's it is the only position that the president could offer me that I just couldn't say no to.
He will soon be the point man for the most critical alliance America has in the Middle East and perhaps the world. Governor Mike Huckabee was just named by President Trump as U.S. ambassador to Israel. And the way things have been lining up, he may have a very good chance to help make history in the world's most strategic region. Governor Huckabee joins us now. Gov, always great to see you. Number one, congratulations on the new position, well-deserved. And number two, I guess we could call it the Trump effect, where suddenly, and this is an issue you'll be dealing with as ambassador, the Iranian regime doesn't seem so eager to tangle with not only Israel, but the United States, now that President Trump is set to return to office. Is that a coincidence?
It is most certainly not a coincidence. It's a reaction to the fact that they know Donald Trump is going to come back into office and put on the maximum pressure that was so very effective in his first term. A lot of people may not have fully understood what the Trump administration was able to do. By putting heavy sanctions on Iran, second and third degree sanctions, it meant that nobody could do business with Iran if they wanted to do business with the United States. So what that did was make nations and businesses force a decision. Do they want to do business with the world's largest market, the United States, or do they want to do business with Iran? And quite frankly, most of them, all of them, decided we'd rather do business with the United States. Well, that was bankrupting the Iranians. And the result was that they didn't have any money to give to Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Houthis. As soon as Joe Biden came into office, the first thing he did was relax those sanctions, and suddenly the Iranians started having money. And what they did with it was they funded their proxy terrorist organizations. And the next thing we see, October the 7th, the murder of over 1,200 Jewish civilians from Gaza. These were horrific things that should never have happened, and they won't happen if Donald Trump is able to once again put on the maximum pressure sanctions.
Yeah. Speaking of maximum pressure, I think of the hostages, Gov. And by the way, you need to be confirmed by the Senate for this position. We feel very, very good about that you will. Sure. And you'll be starting this brand new role in January, but God willing, but the hostages, speaking of maximum pressure, look, there's still several Americans held hostage in Gaza right now. I think back, Gov, to 1981, January 81, when Ronald Reagan took office, the American hostages held in Iran were released. Could we have a similar tact here where Hamas says, you know what, we don't want to tangle with the United States under Donald Trump? And I'd imagine you may be involved in your position in some of those negotiations eventually as well.
I hope they get out before it's even possible for me to be involved. But if not, it would be one of the highest priorities is to get those hostages out, all of them, but especially the 7 Americans. And Eric, there's no excuse, none at all, that the Biden administration has not put a far greater pressure, not just on Hamas, but on the people who fund Hamas, the Iranians, and on the Qataris, who have also helped accommodate many of the Hamas leaders in Qatar. So it's very much past the time that those hostages get released. I keep hearing people talk about a ceasefire. We could have had one on October the 8th. It would have been real simple. Hamas lays down their weapons, they give up their rockets, their missiles, and we have a ceasefire. Until they do that, the Israelis have no choice but continue to eradicate them. They have to do that. But those hostages need to come home. And I'm disappointed that the Biden administration has put more pressure on Israel for a ceasefire than they have on Hamas to let those hostages loose.
Yeah. I want to talk more about your position, Gov, in this incoming administration. But this seems like, again, a sea change from the Biden-Harris administration. As you mentioned, constantly attempting to restrain Israel at every turn. But a new day clearly come January. And what do you think of some of the cabinet appointments that President Trump has made, in addition to yourself, of course? This is a very pro-Israel cabinet. I think of Elise Stefanik at the UN, Senator Rubio, Secretary of State, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor. This is a very pro-Israel administration that's shaping up.
Very much, and it's sent reverberations around the world. Certainly countries that watch this very closely are aware that this is an administration that recognizes Israel's right not only to exist, but to exist without interference and people telling them what to do, how to do it, and also recognizing that Israel has a right to not only exist, but to exist with safe and secure borders and exercise sovereignty over their own land. It's going to be a different day than they've had for the past 4 years. Let's hope that the message comes forth and that the result is that the Abraham Accords, which were incredibly historic in Donald Trump's first term, can be expanded. More Muslim-led countries will recognize Israel is not their enemy. Israel's never going to attack them, never going to try to take their land from them. Israel just wants to be left alone. But there can be a lot of economic benefit if these countries will work with Israel instead of against them, building diplomatic relationships, tourism, trade. Everybody wins, and there's peace in the Middle East when that happens.
Yeah, this seems like such a critical moment. Look, I think of Iran. Iran possibly more vulnerable now than it has been in years, with Hamas and Hezbollah really taking heavy blows. Iran's air defense systems taken out just a few weeks ago by Israel. They are very vulnerable right now. And Gov, about a minute before the break, but Saudi Arabia, perhaps, is that alive again? You mentioned the Abraham Accords, of course. Could this be a situation in the next 4 years where we see the Saudis perhaps come to the table and talk peace with Israel?
I really think we will see that. It's not a given, and there will be certainly significant negotiation as to what it would look like. But the Saudis are aware that Israel is not a threat to them. They could be a help and a partner to them. Now, I'm not suggesting that they're going to maybe sit around a campfire singing Kumbaya, toasting marshmallows together. But if they opened up trade and tourism, diplomatic relations, everybody wins throughout the region and throughout the world. And I do believe that the Crown Prince is interested in making that happen. He wants to lead his country to a more modern setting and to a better place in the world. It's in their best interest, economically, politically, and otherwise. So I think we could see that. I truly do.
Gov, you've served in so many important roles over your career. Obviously, governor of Arkansas. You ran for president twice, the Republican nomination. You've hosted a show on Fox News. You've been hosting a show here on TBN over the past few years. Was this a job, a position, ambassador to Israel, that was always kind of on your radar screen, something you saw as, hey, I'd love to do that?
Not really. To be honest, I really wasn't looking for a federal job in the previous Trump administration. I was offered a couple of cabinet positions and a couple of ambassadorships. And I said, you know, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. There are people who really want these positions, and I kind of enjoy being in the private sector. So I said no to them. When he called this time, and it was out of the clear blue for me, I knew that there were people who were suggesting that I should be considered, but I didn't ask for it. Never had a conversation with him. So I get a phone call, and he's on the other end of the line and says, I want you to be ambassador to Israel. It really came out of left field for me and was somewhat of a shock. I've still been in shock over it. But it's it is the only position that the president could offer me that I just couldn't say no to. And I felt like it was for me an Isaiah moment to say, here am I, send me. So it's just been an incredible whirlwind of activity thinking about it. But I've been going to Israel, Eric, as you know, since 1973, almost 52 years. Made so many trips, probably over 100 now, and have a close relationship with many of the Israeli officials. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu called me within an hour of this becoming public last week. So it's a natural fit for me because of my love for the people and for the country and for its incredibly vital and indispensable role in both human history and in biblical history. So when he offered it, it was one of those, well, it wasn't something I was begging for, but I will joyfully and willingly accept the mission and look forward to it with extraordinary pleasure.
Yeah, and Gov, as you said, you've been going to Israel since 1973, regularly leading tours there. How often will you be in the land now in this new position? I guess you'll spend a good chunk of your time in Israel.
Well, actually, I'll spend all my time there. I mean, it's a post that I'll have to relocate, move to Jerusalem, live in the ambassador's house, and serve at the embassy. The bigger question for me is how often will I get to come back home and see my grandchildren? But for the rest of the time, Janet and I will be permanently located there once we're approved by the Senate, and I'm assuming that that will happen. Of course, nothing is a foregone conclusion in the world of Washington, but provided that that happens, it is a process. It takes time, so it's not going to happen immediately. It could be anywhere from several weeks or it could be months into the new administration before anything would be confirmed.
Yeah. And as you said, Gov, you've had a long-standing relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, a guy like Ron Dermer, who is Bibi's strategic advisor, that entire administration in Israel right now. What kind of edge does that give you coming in? I mean, you're not starting cold. These are people you know, you've dealt with over the years. It's got to give you a pretty good advantage there, it seems, coming in, to have that rapport with them already.
Well, there's a comfort level. In addition to the prime minister, who was very happy about my being named because he and I have been friends for over 30 years. I got a call from Ron Dermer. You just mentioned him. He was the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Been a friend a long time. Got a call from the foreign minister, from many members of the Knesset, and from more people within Israel than I can even begin to name. It seems to have been a very positive move and received well in Israel. And so far, with the exception of some people on the far left that I would have expected to be unhappy about it, it's been well received here in the United States. There is a historic significance. To anyone's knowledge, I'm the first evangelical Christian to be the ambassador to Israel. And that did not create any problems for people in Israel. I think they know that the evangelical community in the United States is the most supportive single bloc that they have. In fact, evangelicals in the U.S. typically are more unilaterally supportive of Israel than even American Jews. So they see it as a good sign and a sign of goodwill, a sign of intention on the part of President Trump to once again deliver for Israel as he so amazingly has. And Eric, you know very well, you're a student of this region. No president ever has done more for the American-Israeli relationships than Donald Trump. Moving the embassy, recognition of the Golan Heights, recognition of Jerusalem as the eternal and forever capital of the state of Israel, and just simply being an unabashed friend and supporter and recognizing that this alliance is not just based on longtime friendship, it's based on strategic necessity for both countries. So I think it bodes well for both the U.S. well as for Israel. And hopefully we're going to see a very different turn of events going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, thanks to President Trump. We will be visiting you in Jerusalem, Governor, at the embassy, which is a very nice thing. Rather, hey, I love Tel Aviv, but Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the land of Israel. Okay, last question. As you roll your sleeves up, you get ready to go to work, what are some of the big ticket issues on your agenda as you take on this new role? Judea, Samaria have been near and dear to your heart, the biblical heartland there. Any issues in particular you're looking to advance in this new post?
Well, of course, one of the roles of an ambassador is to carry out the policies of the president rather than, his or her own particular ideas. Yeah. So finding out exactly what it is that the president wants to do. I'm sure expanding the Abraham Accords is going to be a big part of it. Working, if we don't have the hostages out, to try to get that resolved and to bring some assurance, not just to Israel, but to the rest of the world, that the United States will not have a schizophrenic policy when it comes to Israel, one day praising them and saying we'll stand with you, and the next day giving them lectures on how to defend themselves against terror. So I believe the consistency of that message will be important, but ultimately it's the president's policies. He's the only person who got elected on November the 5th. So what he directs is what all of us will salute and carry out.
Yeah, there is a new sheriff in town, and the tyrants of the world, particularly the mullahs in Tehran, are certainly on notice. Governor Mike Huckabee, I look forward to soon calling you Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Thank you so much for joining us, my friend. Good luck. Congratulations and good luck in your new position. We're praying for you. We can't wait to see what you accomplish in the Middle East with President Trump and the entire team. God bless, Gov. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Eric. God bless you.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.